over the life and legacy of the great Mark Twain. But we've also been presenting some of his little-known science fiction and fantasy work. As I mentioned, he spent the last 20 years of his life writing science fiction and fantasy, and he well tucked it away in these notebooks that were hidden in his attic and found after his death. Let's get into some of those obscure and little-known fragments and stories. Essentially his forgotten science fiction and fantasy work. These forgotten notebooks, as I mentioned, are found in his studio after his death, and they indicate, these notebooks indicate, that like Edgar Allan Poe, Twain draws on the traditions of the literary hoax and tall tale. Like Mr. Poe, Twain was interested in the possibilities of ballooning, and he begins a story in 1868 called William Lackland, about a Frenchman's journey in a balloon from Paris to a prairie town in Illinois. Well, Twain leaves the story unfinished and hides it away in his trunk due to the U.S. publication of Jules Verne's classic novel, 5 Weeks in a Balloon, which is published in the United States in 1869 and becomes an instant bestseller. Now, he returns to the topic of ballooning in an unpublished manuscript called A Murder, a Mystery, and a Marriage in 1876. And we also have Tom Sawyer Abroad from 1894, in which Sawyer crosses the Atlantic by balloon and ends up in an intrigue-filled Cairo, Egypt. Also in this humorous vein, we have a whacked-out utopia tale called The Curious Republic of Gondor. This is 1875, in which a utopian society this utopian society has certain classes of people, the rich and super intelligent, that are essentially in a class by themselves and have more electoral votes than the general population. Gondor is a major influence or inspiration on Kurt Vonnegut's short story, Harrison Bergeron, which was written in 1961. Another skewed view of a utopian state is a celestial one in a story called Captain Stormfell's Visit to Heaven. This is written in 1883 and published after his death in 1909. This story features a materialist heaven located in interstellar space. Captain Stormfell races a comet. He races a comet to heaven with an ever-increasing number of companions. Now, this Stormfell story is a major influence on Olaf Stapleton and his classic novel Star Maker, which was written in 1937. We also have an extensive fragment of an unfinished story called A Letter to a Comet. Now, both The Letter to a Comet and Captain Stormfell apparently prove that Twain had an interest in astronomical distances and outer space. As I mentioned, this is a major influence on Olaf Stapleton. Stapleton's not very well known these days, but I highly recommend you check out Star Maker. All right, now Twain likes to present new frameworks to biblical myth and their metaphorical significance. Folksy versions of biblical myth that are alternatives to orthodox religious belief. For example, the Genesis tale, Papers from the Adam Family, which is written in 1879, but not published until 1962. And of course, there's Letters from Earth, which is written in 1909 and also published in 62. In these works, he attributes human misery and misfortune to the carelessness, the indifference of God. He's full of pity for the human predicament, the human condition, and sees no hope or solutions. We are at the mercy of an incomprehensible God, and human systems. The expectation of rationality or coherence is doomed to frustration. Now, these works influence the absurdist playwrights, as well as this mixture of heavy irony, bordering on black humor, combined with unashamed sentimentality, are a link to the writings of Kurt Vonnegut. Vonnegut is essentially Twain's heir. Vonnegut's work is darkly humorous, sardonic, and apocalyptic, and this shows a major influence of Twain's fantasy and science fiction work. Excuse me. Now, Twain's fascination with both time and history sets the stage for his best and most influential work in science fiction, Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, which is essentially the first genuine time travel novel. The book establishes a pattern. I got a little bit into this. A Promethean-like hero who more or less single-handedly affects the destiny of an entire world or universe. During the writing of this novel, Twain is gripped by the march of invention and technology and gives several lectures that anticipate the invention of radio and television. Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court is a very transitional work between the light and dark Twain corpus. Twain begins to explore gloomy, quasi-Darwinist philosophical realms and ideas. He has a considerably darkened sense of time and the concept of cyclical history, history repeating itself. For example, the secret history of Oedipus, the World Empire, which is written in 1902 but not published until 1972. Oedipus is an incomplete but horrific vision of a dystopian future 1,000 years from now, in which Mary Baker Eddy's Christian Science rules the world. In this work, a frozen and then reanimated Mark Twain is the potential savior of or messiah of the story. Twain is going to reset or reboot civilization and save humanity from Mary Baker Eddy's evil Christianity that has run amok. Now, Twain also explores microcosmic worlds in two extended but unfinished works. The Great Dark, written in 1892 but not published until 1962. This story is about an apocalyptic voyage of a drop of water. Then we have 3,000 Years Among the Microbes. This is published, written in 1905 but not published till 1917. This story features a number of small-town residents, including one called Huck and another one called Gulliver, who are reduced to microscopic size by an angry wizard. Once they're reduced to microscopic size, they explore their new world. Well, it turns out they're inhabiting the body of a diseased tramp, called oh boy, let's see if I can remember this. Blatowski. All right, now it turns out that the universe we inhabit is the diseased body of God. All right, now the macrocosm, the great, and the microcosm, the small, have an interdependent relationship. The alteration of size and scale and the different perspectives presented upon the changes is one of the most common fantastic devices in literature and legend, and central to many satires. For example, Jonathan Swift and Gulliver's Travels. The concept, the idea that there might be worlds within worlds, that the atom itself is a tiny solar system / universe. Well, all atoms in our universe might be a solar system in their own right. So the relationship between mass, strength, and organic complexity All our solar systems or galaxies are themselves atoms within a macrocosm. All right, so Twain explores this concept in these two unfinished tales. He's really exploring sci-fi and fantasy in an amazing way. Twain also explores the concept of DNA 40 years before its actual discovery in an Edisonade tale called The American Claimant. This is 1892. A Colonel Mulberry Sellers claims, among other inventions, to have perfected a device called the materializer, which can reconstruct the dead from whatever original atoms still remain. Twain also links the microscopic world with instantaneous travel and communication, and argues for the reality of extrasensory perception, ESP, in two essays called Mental Telegraphy, 1891, and Mental Telegraphy again, 1895. He comes up with the concept of the